Hey, Fierce Visionaries, welcome to the Practice Your Perfect podcast. If you're new to the channel, I am your fairy goal mother. We're trying that one out, Ashley Tate. And today we're talking about the goal of getting those words on the page. Okay, it's really tough to increase your profit, purpose, and productivity if you don't know how to get your message out into the world or share that you might need, to set some boundaries with people so that you can be more productive, so that you can create the space to unleash your something amazing. So in today's video, we're getting rid of all of that procrastination. We are going to start getting those words on the page. And honestly, just so you guys know, I have struggled with this same exact feeling for such a long time. And when I talk about a long time, I mean like years. Writing has always been a real struggle for me. I don't know what it is about writing that makes me feel like it needs to be perfect. I mean, I love creating something, but I think maybe I put too much pressure on the final product and feel like it needs to have some form of perfection like associated with it. So even though I understand the idea of like not editing while you're writing and the art of revisions and, I just keep finding myself blocked whenever I sat down to write. So I really wanted to share this new method that I've used for writing and really sharing my thoughts with the world and just overall finding a way to move past that procrastination because y'all, procrastination became like my best friend. Okay. But last year I stumbled upon a method that I kind of, inadvertently created, not really, it wasn't like a goal to create this, but it really has unlocked like the floodgates of ideas. And, whether you're a blogger, a content creator, or simply someone grappling with, writer's block, this approach might really help you get a breakthrough. So the real thing that I think it comes down to is a fear of writing. I think it feels overwhelming and daunting and, not getting it out the right way, or will people understand it? Or like, sometimes my ideas are in there, but they're all jumbled up and not organized. And so I felt like it was more of a struggle to get the words out in an organized fashion. And since they were never coming out that way, I just decided that I just wouldn't do it, right? The other side of that is like, you're like, I have so many things to say. And maybe you're somebody just like me that wants to express your ideas, but doesn't really know how. And so in today's video, I really want to talk about how to achieve that goal and how to get those words on the page. So I am completely guilty of that same feeling. Let's get into this because like I said, procrastination being your best friend is not a good place to be. Okay. I was not producing anything. I wasn't producing blogs, no podcasts, no threads, no tweets, no captions, nothing. Even though I was full of all of these ideas that I think could really help the world and really, get my message out there, I just wasn't able to, for some reason, really express what that would look like. Okay. Like for you guys. And so it was feeling like I was holding myself back, like it was a major struggle. So as a content creator in some form or another for the past 7 years, I've often found myself struggling to just articulate, my thoughts very clearly, whether it's on a video or it's in a short form video, whatever it is. And I used to rush into recording videos with only a few scattered points. And that really just results in murky content. And murky content does not get you subscribers. It doesn't get you any further with your message. It doesn't help people really understand like who you are. And then that kind of created a cycle. And so then I was avoiding writing, and then that became a habit since it wasn't really my forte. And like, who really enjoys grappling with weaknesses, right? Like we want to avoid working with our weaknesses as much as possible. And that's just human nature. So if you're feeling as though you are avoiding that writing, I think that this process that I've come up with will really be helpful to you. It's been a game changer for me. And, I obviously still fall back into some feelings of procrastination, feelings of perfectionism and wanting things to be right. But this always kind of pulls you back into the freedom to create. So I really want to jump into this. So when I kind of got to this point where something had to change, one of the first things that I realized was like, I needed a fresh perspective. Like I needed to really kind of just take a hiatus away from writing. And like, I really refrained from pressuring myself to write. I actually probably I don't think I wrote on my computer. I don't think I like wrote on paper just for a long time. I just needed a break. And I think sometimes those breaks are really beneficial for you. And during that time, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to start like seeking inspiration and trying to see like what I need, trying different things, being open to different ways to write and different ways to learn from other people. So I started really looking on YouTube and finding different videos that might be helpful to me. And I stumbled upon a YouTuber named Christy Ann Jones. And she has a great channel, by the way. And she talks all about writing on that channel. And so I thought, let me just follow her and see what she's over there talking about, right? So she had an experiment where she was working with the famous author Neil Gaiman. And he's the author that wrote Coraline. So one of the things I really liked about that particular video, because I'd watched a few videos from her, like Stephen King and a couple of other writers. Now, I don't think of myself as a writer like that, but I thought that was a good way to find inspiration and a good way to really think about writing and see how these people are able to produce these massive books and like multiple books and just kind of learn from them, right? Sometimes we have to step back into that learner self and really start to take in information from the people who have already done it, right? The gurus. Anyway, what I loved about this is that he gave himself permission to not write, even though that's what he does. Like that's your only option. You can do nothing or write for 5 hours. And he did it between the hours of 1 and 6 p.m. And he could only have a pen and a notebook and no computer. He had to be as far away from his computer as possible. And so the way he kind of describes it is that he would go out into a gazebo and he would only have this pen and his notebook. And he would sit out there for 5 hours and just give himself the option to either write or not write. And I was really intrigued by this. So I decided to kind of adopt a modified version of his routine. Now, I did try his routine like he did it, maybe like a day or two. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But I incorporated a couple of other things that I think would make this process more realistic for those of us that work and have families and have other things going on. So I incorporated a few things that worked best for my lifestyle that I wanted to share in today's episode. And this is how I came up with the intentional journaling roadmap. So of course I started with Neil Gaiman's Do Nothing or Write for 5 hours. I tried that and there were some things I needed to change. And to be honest, I really did love the 4 to 5 hour trial that I did. It was amazing. I felt like I made some major progress. I thought it was a great exercise in just shutting out the world and being able to write for 45 hours, but it was extremely unrealistic. What it showed me was that the content was there. Like I had more than enough to keep writing. I could have, given the amount of time and the permission to do nothing or write, I could just continue writing forever and ever. So I do absolutely recommend you try it for a day or two, like and put it in your schedule that you're going to schedule out this amount of time to write, just to kind of give you some breakthroughs and to kind of see what you naturally think about, what you naturally want to talk about, what thoughts you can kind of expand on that you really didn't realize that you had to be able to do this, right? Honestly, the experiment of allowing yourself to do nothing is like shaking a snow globe and then finally setting it down. And what that means is like when you shake the snow globe, you know how there's all those things floating around. Okay. So that was kind of like all the thoughts we have in our minds, all the things we have to do and get done and the to-do list and, pick up kids and do this and send emails. And when you set that globe down, what it allows you to do is just watch everything settle. That permission to say, I'm not going to focus on anything else except this is the settling of all the snow in the snow globe. That's how it felt to me. So that was kind of the first aha moment. And I'll come back to this in a minute, but really that was super helpful to just realize that maybe that's the problem, right? Maybe that's one of the issues. So then I realized writing seemed way more enticing than just sitting there for 4 to 5 hours or just sitting in general. And you might find yourself sitting for, 5 minutes or 10 minutes. But again, that perfectionism came out and it was like, hey, like, what are we writing about? What are we trying to say here? What's the goal? And I realized that the goal is actually just to write. So I went back to the morning pages from The Artist's Way, and I've used that in the past. And I thought, you know what? one of those days, I'm just going to brain dump. And I did. And I just sat, and the brain dump was absolutely necessary. So as I'm practicing this experiment, I'm also learning about what I needed. And I think that's the beauty of when you practice things, you learn and you get feedback and you get this information about what you need and what's going to work best for you in your lifestyle and how you do things. So that was the second piece. Now, in the artist's way, she has you write 3 full pages of this brain dump. I didn't do the 3 full pages. I just wrote the brain dump until I felt like I had it coming out. And honestly, what I actually incorporated into the intentional journaling process was not only the permission to choose to write or do nothing, but also the permission to go back and forth between brain dumping and actually writing something. So I used it as just a place to let my thoughts wander freely. It feels a little discombobulating when you first do it because you feel like you're wasting time. But when you take the time to come back to it later, maybe the next day or that evening, and you look through some of your notes, there's a lot of gold in there. And that's what you can kind of build off of and then go back and type into some form of a blog post or a caption or a thread or a tweet, whatever it is that you need to use it for. But what it allows you to do is to capture while your brain is in that creative mode. So I really recommend adding those 2 things in as well, because the stream of consciousness without censoring was also another form of permission for myself. So I just want to go back to the 4 to 5 hour period of time that I said I would come back to, because that gave me the big another big aha about myself, which is the 4 to 5 hours or a really long extended amount of time wasn't something that was necessarily going to be helpful to me. I don't know if I have ADHD or not, but the lizard brain was going insane. So the lizard brain was like, we need to eat. We have to make matcha. We have to do this. We have to go pick up the kids. We have to do it. And it was hard to keep it focused for 2 hours at a time. So what I realized was that a technique that I've been using for a very long time in my life is the Pomodoro method. And what I loved about the Pomodoro method is that it allows you to focus for 25 minutes and you focus on whatever it is that you're doing for 25 minutes. I think it's a fantastic way to study, to read, to do anything, to write, all of the things. So I used the Pomodoro method, and what it allowed me to do was to break up those hours into 2 25-minute intervals. And then I had a 5-minute break in between. And when I talked about resetting my brain, this is one of those things where you reset your brain the most. So you tell your brain, we're going to focus for 25 minutes, and then we'll get up and we'll check the phone and we'll go get, coffee, or we'll go do whatever you need to do, for 5 minutes and, go use the restroom, whatever you have to do. And it's just 5 minutes. And it allows you to check back into reality. I have kids, like sometimes they might text or need something. You might have phone calls that came through that you just need to text a response back and then say you can get back to them after your period of time that you're working on writing. And I felt like it was just very freeing to be able to tell myself, okay, 25 minutes, we're going to focus. And in 5 minutes, nothing's going to happen in 25 minutes. That's what I came to realize. Like nothing's really going to happen in 25 minutes that you can't get back to and address in those 5-minute breaks. One of the things that you'll probably end up noticing is that if you have the time to write for 4 or 5 hours, which if you do, you have an amazing life. But if you have the time to write for 4 or 5 hours and you start to use the Pomodoro technique, you'll realize that you can actually write a lot longer than you think, because with those breaks, 2 hours goes by with 4 sessions of the Pomodoro technique and 2 or 3 breaks in between. So it's a really nice way to kind of use that period of time that could feel longer and you're getting a lot more done, but you're actually, taking breaks when necessary. No matter what it is that you want to write, it isn't necessarily our belief in ourselves that puts the feeling of blocking on us for writing. It's more of the restrictions that we give ourselves that hold us back from really sharing our gifts with the world. And this whole process kind of gave me a reframe about writing, right? Like now I see it as a way to share my gifts, share my message with the world, rather than a way to perfectly put out a message, right? And produce the perfect piece for someone to read or someone to watch or whatever the case. What I really came to realize was that the time wasn't the issue. It was really giving myself the permission to do nothing or to write. Because every time I'd sit down to write, and you may feel the same way, is like every time I sit down to write, I felt like I was actually wasting time and that I was not necessarily producing a final product. But what I came to realize through this intentional journaling process and putting all of those pieces together is that all of those areas were just permissions that I was giving myself. I was giving myself the permission to maybe only write for 25 minutes, but also do nothing or write for 4 to 5 hours if I had the time. But I was really never going to fail if I just sat down for 25 minutes a day at a minimum and just wrote. And then the second permission was to write about anything and everything, not in any specific way, not a brain dump first and then the content. But I could write about anything whenever I wanted to. I could write about content first if I had a great idea, then I could go into a brain dump and add some notes. And it really opened up almost like a childlike feeling again, like when we used to sit down and just, you could write whatever you wanted. And honestly, when I stopped to think about this, when you think about what you were doing between like the ages of 6 to 10, and you were kind of like free and able to do whatever you wanted, I used to write these stories all the time about, I would cut out people out of the JCPenney magazine and I would write stories about them on the side. And then I would sell those books to neighbors. And I feel like it's kind of doing the same thing, right? Like you're writing stories, you're doing the things, you're coming up with ideas, and then you're sharing that with the world. And that's the permission that we give ourselves when we say, okay, we don't have to have this really strict routine of writing, and it doesn't have to be for hours on end. It doesn't have to be like anyone else. We just have to show up and we have to do it for 25 minutes, and it's free flowing and really a way to unlock that creativity that we all have inside of us, but that we have put so many restrictions on over time. And intentional journaling really takes those restrictions away, but allows you to modify it in a way that's best for your lifestyle. So what I found by embracing intentional journaling is that, using these times to experiment and kind of try different writing techniques and all of these things have really transformed the approach to my writing. And it's no longer really a daunting task. It's not something I feel that that I have to do. I feel like it's almost like a liberating journey that I get to sit down and just kind of express myself fully and find that creativity and just kind of lean into it. So if you find yourself struggling with writing, really consider giving intentional journaling a try, because it might literally just be the key to unlocking your creativity to help you get out there and really unleash your something amazing to the world. And let me know down in the comments, one of the things that you've been putting restrictions on yourself for writing or being creative. Like sometimes it's just the restrictions that we don't really realize that we need the permission to do that's holding us back from our journey. So until next time, practice this and stay fierce on your goals. Bye.